Posted by u/gender010. My town celebrates Christmas around 3 months after December. I just wish our Santa wasn't real. All of my life, I've been living in a very small town north of Canada. It has a population of maybe around 500. Pretty much everyone knows each other, from our classmates to our classmates' family to the employees at the grocery store to the mailman and librarian. Before I go and explain our very unusual tradition and what happened to me, I'd like to introduce myself a bit. My name is Ezekiel, and I just reached 16 years old. We're in the middle of March, and yesterday was our town's Christmas, which is already there and then our town's main highlight. I don't do much in my everyday routine. I go to school, mind my own business, hang out with 2 of my friends often and crush on this one lonely girl. Pretty basic. So a few days ago, it was the last day of school before Christmas break. At first I didn't want to go, but I thought spending time with my friends before the break could be enjoyable. Sadly, they both weren't present, nor was around half of my classroom. There were the cool kids there, the 1 or 2 students that never miss a day, and the girl I like, Lana. Since she's already pretty lonely and I didn't have anyone to go talk to, I decided to go start up a conversation with her. Obviously nothing major happened. We talked the whole day, exchanged phone numbers, and met up a few times during Christmas break and hung out. If there's something strange about our Christmas tradition, it's that parents are not allowed to be inside their household with their children during Christmas Eve's night. They must be sleeping in a household with no children inside. I always hated that tradition, since I have no siblings and my friends are never allowed to spend the night over because their parents wants them home with their siblings. This year was going to be a bit different. Lana also has no siblings and suffers the same boring fate as I do, so we talked to our parents and agreed to have her spend the night over during Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve arrived, and Lana arrived home at around 3 p.m. I introduced her to my parents and showed her around the house. We ate our Christmas dinner and at 8 p.m., it was time for my parents to leave. Make sure you both are in bed no later than midnight. As for the tradition, any noises you hear, do not leave your room. Those are the warnings every children receive each year. My parents had booked a hotel room for the night, like every year. Me and Lena went up to my room and played a few games and chatted until my watch beeped, letting me know that it was now 11 p.m. I notified Lana, and she sat there, thinking, what if we stayed up? I blinked a few times. I had never thought of what would happen if I stayed up, but now that Lana had asked, a sense of illegal excitement filled my body. I wanted to know what would happen. Me and Lena both agreed to stay up and go down at midnight. We continued chatting until my watch warned me again that another hour had passed, and we slowly exited my room. We quietly marched down the stairs into the living room, where 2 candles lit up the room. The Christmas tree sat proudly next to the chimney, to which we stood in front. That's where he comes from, right? Lana had asked. We stood in silence and looked at the chimney, until a thud was heard from above. We both took a step back, as ashes fell down the chimney and left a small cloud of smoke in my living room. Grunts could be heard as something was coming down, seemingly scratching its way down. We took a few more steps back after seeing a bony hand slip down. Every fingers were long, and had very pointy nails. A pair of boots came down, and a man crouched down and came outside the chimney, standing in front of us. Safe to say, it did not look anything like the Santa we see in our Christmas stories. The man, no the thing, must have been around 7 feet tall. It had white, empty, soulless eyes, which still somehow managed to stare into the bottom of our beings. It stood in a way no man or creature could ever stand, and had an abnormal posture. It almost looked like its bones were about to rip out of its body with how thin and tight its skin looked. Me and Lana were terrified. We couldn't move. She held my hand tighter than anything has ever held it as the man started coughing deeply. It gagged and growled, and something big and square seemed to go up its throat. We looked in disgust as it opened its mouth wider than any being ever could, and dropped a saliva-drenched gift at the base of our Christmas tree, bearing the name Ezekiel on a little piece of paper attached to it. Then came another, this one holding Lana's name. The creature turned its head towards us, and grinned widely, showing its huge set of teeth, before twitching down and crawling back up my chimney. When we were sure it was gone, me and Lana ran back to my room and huddled in my blankets until dawn. We did not manage to sleep at all that night. I think it's safe to admit we're never going to break our tradition's rules ever again. r/Nosleep. Posted by u/Spirit of Pines. If you're ever drunk at 3 a.m. in the back of Bayou Berry and an old man offers a friendly game of cards, well, it's too late to back out now. So I'm drunk at Bayou Berry. taking advantage of the time-honored law of bartending, whereby you're allowed to get absolutely wrecked without getting fired. As long as it's not your bar. And when I say drunk, I mean really drunk, even by bartender standards. So I don't bat an eye when an old man wearing an old raincoat sits down and offers me a friendly game of cards. I've made a long series of mistakes to get here. But it's too late to back out now. And why should I be able to see his eyes? Wearing sunglasses, even late at night, is standard fare for Texas Hold'em. So is the cigar and the thick plume of smoke. The accent is a little unusual. But it is a touristy part of town. In fact, this guy's looks familiar. And I'm not put off by his crazy patter about the mystic properties of playing cards. People believe in all kinds of crazy things here. Seeing the future in a pile of chicken entrails. That 4,000 calories of white bread soaked in industrial-grade fats makes for a good breakfast. Hell, some of these freaks still see jazz musician as a viable career path. So it's not that weird when he starts talking about seeing my future in a pack of cards. I mean, that can be literally, scientifically true, right? If we each put a couple $100 on the table. And the deck is ordered so he'll get a pair of aces, and I'll get a pair of kings. My future is already written. It's not a great future. It involves a lighter wallet and an unpaid tab. But it's as set in stone as anything can be. Of course, in this game and this bar I might be lucky if that's the only consequence I face. People think it's the old part of town that's dangerous. But why would the locals rob you in their own backyard? No, it's the tourist traps that make for the best targets. Especially on a cold Tuesday night off of peak tourist season. When the cops are huddled up nice and warm inside their fogged-up squad cars. But I'm too drunk to care. And this guy doesn't seem to care about money anyways, he just wants to talk about the mystical properties of cards. So I humor him. Hell, maybe he does know something. So much of what I've been told turned out to be a damn stinking lie. The news. The textbooks. The things politicians say. In a world where all that's a lie. Who knows what could be true? Maybe there's something to an old man in an old raincoat talking about seeing the future in a deck of cards. He explains that that's where playing cards come from anyway. They were originally fortune-telling devices. Throwing bones lead to throwing dice lead to flipping cards. And if those cards suggest something terrible? Well, I've made so many mistakes to get here, to this bar, in this cheap, touristy part of town. That everything that comes next is gravy. Even if the future he sees is miserable. That's a gift, because at least it means I have a future. But the past is another story. So when he starts talking about the past, that's when my mood shifts. See, the past isn't a gift. Not for me. And it's not up for debate either, despite what I told the court reporter. I can't just write it off as the ramblings of another NOLA drunkard. So now I'm angry. Really angry, when he brings up that fraternity prank gone wrong. Now, I don't worry that he recognizes me. He could be a janitor at Tulane, he certainly looks the part, and news of the incident was all around the school. But I am mad. I finally tell him to back off. What does getting kicked out of Tulane Law School have to do with seeing the future in a deck of cards? Plus, nothing was ever proven in a court of law. The college follows its own damn rules, but thankfully my lawyer doesn't. Now the social media smear campaign that lead me to a legal name change. And the photos of that sobbing girl. Well, maybe I would have traded a stint in jail to make all that go away. And here's where the old man perks up. Because there's no stakes yet. It's just me, the deck of cards, the old man, and a bar that's surprisingly dark, even by late-night New Orleans standards. The bartender must have stepped out for a smoke. There's an awful lot of smoke inside the bar now. An awful lot of smoke. And an awful lot of strange accent in the old man's voice. And that's when he explains why he's gotta talk about the past. Because you see, the future has a whole lot to do with your past. And a past where that little fraternity prank gone wrong never happened. I was blacked out, so for me it basically didn't means a very different future. It means that instead of talking a big game about working on an oil rig, while working at a small bar across the street from the one I'm in now. Maybe I stayed in law school. Maybe my fiancée stayed with me too. And this is where the old man gives a knowing smile underneath those huge sunglasses of his. This is when, brushing my wallet aside, he offers stakes on this friendly little card game. He explains, as he cuts the deck. I'm a cutter. I used to work in radio. I cut radio shows. Then Hollywood for a while. I cut movies. Now I cut cards. And I cut lives. The room is now just billowing with smoke. But I'm hypnotized. I can't tear my eyes away as he removes an ornate pair of brass scissors from his raincoat. He gives them an ominous click in the air. And all of a sudden, the empty bottle next to me on the table is gone. Some clever bit of sleight of hand? Did he knock the bottle off the table when I wasn't paying attention? Lose it in the shadows and smoke? But then he clicks those scissors again. And the smoke is gone. The room is as clean as if a team of maids have been in here for hours. He clicks again, and the raincoat is gone. Now the old man, the cutter, is sitting in a three-piece suit, still wearing his giant sunglasses, and an even bigger grin. Did I mention I was drunk? And maybe a little high if I'm being completely honest. And in this crazy blur of drunkenness I'm utterly captivated when the cutter finally explains the stakes. He tells me that if I win, he'll click those scissors of his, and wipe away that nasty little fraternity prank gone wrong. But if he wins, he gets my firstborn son. It's a bad joke, but not uncommon at the Harrah's $1, $3 poker game, about all I can afford these days. Maybe that's where I've seen this guy smoking outside the Harrah's poker room? And I don't even have a son. But it's way too late. And I'm way too drunk to process what's going on. This is something I've fantasized, obsessed about far more than any woman. The ability to snip that nasty little passage from my life. Hell, the ability to snip just a few seconds, maybe a single shot of whiskey would be enough. And I deserve it, right? The universe conspired to make those events unfold. I didn't pick the roommates who forced the shots down my throat as part of the hazing. Hell, I didn't even pick Elaine. I wanted to go somewhere colder for a change. Get out of the swamp. But Tulane was the only place that let me in. And those roommates were the only ones available. One thing's clear through the drunken haze, I didn't have a choice then, and I don't have a choice now. Have I ever truly had a choice? So I grabbed the old man's hand. And I shake hard. If the parts before were a blur, now things really get muddy. But in the drunken blur, one thing is abundantly clear. I lost. I lost big. Why stop now, right? Just another loss in a string of hundreds. Maybe thousands. And when I wake up the next morning in the kitchen of Bayou Berry with a dish towel for a pillow. For what I wish I could say was the first time. I don't think about the haze from the night before. I don't think about it at all for 3 years. Until I'm back in North Carolina, standing next to my new girlfriend, filled with dread, staring down at a positive pregnancy test. And hearing the faint sound of scissors clicking in my ear.